Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I feel like an idiot for posting on 4chan, and even more so for posting on /x/, so I'll cut to the chase. Pick unrelated. After experiencing a traumatic event a few months ago, it felt like there was this layer peeled away from reality. I can only describe it as looking behind Oz's curtain and seeing the true, disappointing nature of things. I've come to the conclusion, there are human beings and then there are people. All people are human beings, but not all human beings are people. Human beings walk, talk, breathe, have their own thought processes and emotions, I'll acknowledge that. But the difference between them and a person is some spark I can't entirely describe. A full-fledged person has a desire to further themselves or change. A person thinks critically about the nature of their reality. A person is more prone to feeling dissatisfied, depressed, and wants to fulfill a purpose. I've met a few other people who believe in this phenomena. I've seen it described as being an NPC, but I don't believe they're non-entities in some simulation. I believe maybe they're just born whole, with no room to change or grow their whole lives. It's like a flat line of no development. Everything stays the same for them and they are content. Thoughts?
We're artificially developed to be that way. It's a punishment just to be it. Also, if you put the conditioned into extreme situations and/or gradually destroy literally everything, they know they can think for themselves if they survive it. The alternate path for them is that if they can't handle it, they commit an hero or become shut-ins.
It absolutely exists. However, it's not as cut and dry as it sometimes appears or as it is in specific settings. It's a scale that ranges from full NPC or zombie to fully wide-awake person. There are many factors. Some I correlate are: intelligence is a factor. Life experience is a factor. Contentedness is a factor. Passion is a factor. Social conditioning is a factor. In one way, you're talking about the matrix or one of them. I think many people lose their childhood selves from conditioning and trauma. They gave up their power and their key a long time ago. As a survival mechanism, they stopped trying to change things and just accepted or became complacent. For them to become awake now, they would have to confront all their happiness, pain, suffering, trauma, and so on, in themselves, and it would release a life's worth of repression. It's too much for many people, so they never do. Then in others, new trauma forces it to the surface. But again, I do think a lot of it is just beaten out of people by the system at an early age.
You seem to hit the nail on the head. All children are free thinkers, however, at a certain age they become docile and obedient. Don't get me wrong, conforming to society has its benefits, but most people can't find the balance between conforming and being themselves. A good example of hyperconformity is the certain four-word phrase meme of the 2016 elections. It only took 4 words to get half of the country ticked off and protest. A true thinker would just let it slide, because in the end, 4 words isn't worth anyone's time and energy.
Right. You see it in kids. They aren't NPCs, and then it's gone by adulthood. I agree, it looks like society is not in balance with it, hence dehumanization, corruption, and why you see people using the word sheeple. Just another iteration of what we're talking about. Many, but certainly not all, have forgotten what it means to be alive and how to really live. But again, some of that has been specifically oppressed by the old systems and the powers that be as a means of control. Yes, the whole people getting triggered by words is a huge issue. You have tons of adults running around with no emotional control, which is what some people want. It makes them controllable. On one side, words have great power. On the other, sticks and stones will hurt you, but a word can't. People have forgotten or never learned the sticks and stones part. Instead, you have a bunch of elite magicians that want people susceptible to their spells, their words. They want to end free speech so that their spells have more power. Curse words were the first trigger words.
You only live once. Seriously though, if you've got nothing going for you and waste your time on 4chan, what do you have to lose? I'm kinda starting to think that repression is what's stopping a lot of people from doing things.
Many people are repressed or repress stuff, and it stops them from doing a lot. I don't consider chatting with people online a waste of time. Conversation is still conversation, and unfortunately I don't currently have much access in person. Another thing to add to the discussion is the fact that the issues seems much more prevalent in some countries than others. I would say it's the worst in the US and China, and parts of Europe like the UK have it bad too. You see other countries having large social movements more frequently. The US, for example, hasn't had a real social movement in 50 years. You had occupied movements, but they never reached critical mass. I think that's another reason some people say NPCs are on the rise at the moment.
Is there a limited number of souls? I constantly feel like some people I talk to simply aren't alive. It's not a, they don't want to talk to me right now, so they're acting boring thing. I can differentiate when that is happening, and when someone is simply a soulless NPC, it's crazy to me. I remember reading a 4chan screenshot that talked about it. Do you think I'm just being a nerd? Or is this really a thing? I don't consider myself better than others. I often talk to people I think have soul, whether I hate them or like them, but some people are just nothing. Like empty husks, childish and delayed despite their age. No meaning to their life, no philosophy, no nothing. Like a filler character, you get what I mean? I'd say 3 billion of the population has souls while 5 billion doesn't. What do you think? Am I just being stupid? I feel like I am, but it's just so weird meeting people like that. Hell, I have some in my own family.
I never post on this board, but this is a theory that I've had for a while when I started thinking about reincarnation. I have no idea if reincarnation is real or not, but if we assume that it is, it doesn't make sense that the population is larger than it ever has been, unless you consider that not everyone has a soul. The amount of people these days that seem like completely empty shells, husks, NPCs, they let themselves be programmed by the media and easily influenced by the things that surround them. The NPC meme is definitely real. The question is whether or not it's actually tied to a soul, or whether these people do have souls that are being repressed.
In all things, I yearn for the past. Modern fashions seem to keep on growing more and more debased. I find that even among the splendid pieces of furniture built by our master cabinet makers, those in the old forms are the most pleasing. And as for writing letters, surviving scraps from the past reveal how superb the phrasing used to be. The ordinary spoken language has also steadily coarsened. People used to say, raise the carriage shafts or trim the lamp wick, but people today say, raise it or trim it. When they should say, let the men of the palace staff stand forth, they say, torches, let's have some light. Instead of calling the place where the lectures on the Sutra of the Golden Light are delivered before the emperor the hall of the imperial lecture, they shortened it to the lecture hall, a deplorable corruption, an old gentleman complained. Yoshida Kenko, Essay in Idleness, circa 1330. Curmudgeons, a bad-tempered person, have always lamented how much better they are than the rest of society, and how much worse things are now. Are people actually getting worse, or is it just because you can see more than a few hundred other human beings in the course of your life thanks to modern technology?
I've been having thoughts of an eerie similar nature and only clicked this thread from the catalog because of your opening statement about feeling like an idiot for posting. OP. I feel like you should view this from a different perspective. This is my take. Consciousness is an unseen force that existed before the universe was even created. It is a river that we all drink from. Some sip from the bank's edge, and others swim while drinking it. Those who interact with it the most are more self-aware. Self-awareness leads to questioning, truth-seeking, and knowledge-building. Those who are less conscious, either due to genetics, brain-damaged or low IQ people, etc., or other factors like mental health conditions, are less likely to question their reality and seek a better life for themselves.
The NPC meme is real. This is something understood by big brains like Julian Jaynes. Read his book, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. It's about what you're talking about, basically. Early man were still animals, even while they had some caveman culture like cave paintings, making clothes, tools, traditions, but they aren't self-aware. In the second half of the book, The connection starts being made that some people even today aren't thinking people. He also says schizos were more common back in the day. That's how people used to talk to God. They didn't pray, they literally just yelled out loud to speak with God, and they could hear a response. Just like animals can learn new things, have intelligence, they don't have a soul because they are only partially self-aware and don't understand their place in the universe. NPCs also have intelligence, can learn, have relationships, but not completely there. I think it's possible for someone to grow out of being an NPC. They will no longer feel like they are on autopilot and will look back on their former life and know how unaware they were. It's like sobering up slowly from being blackout drunk.
Holy shit. This thread is full of unenlightened morons. OP, do you know what meditation is? It's emptying your mind and your consciousness because those are just egoistic illusions. You think you're better than others because you are an egoistic moron. There's nothing inherently special about you that others don't have. All humans have the divine spark. Some are just naturally more in tune to it than others, but the potential to harvest it and use it is still there. You're not better than them, and the NPC is a glow in the dark psyop to keep you unenlightened and stuffed up in your own ego. You want to not consciously think and be in the present. That brings you closer to the One. Your interpretation of that book is completely wrong. It's not better that we have individual consciousness. Thinking is for plebs. Most great artists and scientists receive divine inspirations. You noobs don't know jack shit.
Everyone has something inherently special that others don't have.
Those who received divine inspiration needed thinking to process it, abilities and knowledge to put it into context and create new things on its basis. You come here with pretentious attitude, lording over and shitting on anons, and ironically, you want to point out who has issues with ego. On top of that, not knowing the difference between the concept of ego in esoterics and egoism, a theory in ethics, given you call someone egoist. Seems like you're pretty full of yourself, and the term of egoist befits you more than most anons. In this thread,
This is so fucking stupid, so common, and it only serves to make depressed outcasts feel superior to more well-adjusted people. Everyone's wants to accomplish something, further themselves, and change. Everyone's dissatisfied with some aspect of the system. Everyone's got questions about existence. Some basically settle it with religion. Some come up with some vague, quasi-spiritual rationalization that satisfies them. Some never settle it and accept the unknown. Just because some suburban wine mum with a minivan and a monogrammed cup holder doesn't constantly drone on about the nature of existence or being so depressed or whatever, that doesn't mean she isn't a complex, rationalizing person.
You're wrong about part of what you wrote. And on top of that, you certainly aren't any shining example of what you're claiming by running around calling everyone morons. You're not going to teach people that way. What you're getting at is that people were capable at some point, or are capable again, and that some people are already doing what OP commented about. However, that doesn't change the fact that a large number, using your words, are less in tune or lost tune. That's what OP is getting at. You're right that this site is partially a glow psyop, but that's not all it is, and the NPC thing was not so much a psyop as it was something that a large number of users resonated with. That happened before it started getting spread around. You really should be asking yourself why you feel so threatened or disgusted at the idea that maybe a group of people have a different perspective than you, that maybe they do see a trend. There's an obvious disconnect somewhere, otherwise the world wouldn't have the current problem set it does. If you think human life is just unfair, and that it's not people making it unfair, you should reevaluate some of those connections.
I don't think there is something spiritual involved. Most people are dumb and empty-minded because they refuse to learn anything new. If you stop learning new things, you essentially become a baby again, and this is what happens to most people. Also, school is a big part of this problem because information is easily forgotten if it's never applied. Your brain only registers new information if you make use of it.
Why do you believe in the NPC meme? What's your qualifying criteria for NPC, and why are you different? I asked this question a while ago when the meme was fresh, and now I want to ask it again after the meme has settled and people have had time to internalize and mull over some of the more intricate aspects of it. Before you answer, I want you to really think about it. Play devil's advocate with yourself. If you really think you're not an NPC, then prove it. Define your guidelines and apply them critically to your behavior, and see if maybe any of the guidelines do fit you in some way, and then revise. One of the most common answers I got when I first asked this question was people who just repeat dogma without thinking for themselves. Basically, people who fall into social pressure easily. The problem with that is, so do many people here. This board has many examples. Why do you think you're not an NPC if you've read the entirety of Crowley's writings, yet discard a paragraph-long post on here someone wrote to you? Is it because you don't know them, because it doesn't interest you, or maybe because that person is not famous and Crowley was, so obviously he is doing something right? It seems very much like social pressure to cave into any thought form just because the person writing it was highly regarded, or because the viewpoint doesn't match up with your own. An NPC would also think their viewpoint is the undeniably right path. No. That was just to use one example of the level of critical thinking you will be tasked with to prove your consciousness. So with that example in mind as the critical basis for your arguments, are you an NPC anon? This may seem silly as it's just a meme. It's very important you understand how to defend your own consciousness though. What if the new season of Mick and Rorty makes an NPC meme? Suddenly, there are thousands of kids with the idea in their mind that some people may not be alive like them. Pop culture bleeds into real culture anons.
For one, I, like anyone else, have noticed multiple archetypal groups of people that can be encountered in the world. Not to say groups of college students are all inherently the same, for example. But it's the personality they all have which is copy/pasted. They may have different names, different memories, but in the end they are essentially a base NPC with a few extra quirks thrown in. This goes for more niche groups as well. I recently realized that there is an archetypal group of degenerates and outcasts, which seriously threw me for a loop. They are usually loud or boisterous and may include a substantial number of people despite their obvious flaws. They tend to include particularly unattractive people in their ranks that may smell bad and joke about things that really aren't funny to anyone outside of the group. I mention them as NPCs only because of their similar behavior to so many people like them, rather than judge their ability to act like real social outcasts. I originally would have thought this group to be the least NPC-addled of them all. I also want to mention that I've encountered two types of NPCs. The first is able to record memory and adapt to social situations. The other seems not to remember very much and acts in a very predictable manner. For example, the first NPC would remember important things like what a player told them a long time ago, whereas the second would forget it almost as soon as it was told. It's as if some NPCs aren't marked essential. However, I believe that if a player interacts with an NPC enough, then they will be marked essential and become a bit more fleshed out. I only speak from both observation and experience here. As for me, the experiences I have had, the pain I've been going through, and the difficulty of everyday life have led me to believe that I am real. I don't think an NPC would be equipped to handle this, but I am open to the idea. Existence is existence, isn't it?
I don't believe in the NPC meme, but it does a good job of categorizing the majority of populations. That is, people whose lives adhere entirely to the system of standards that are encouraged by the government, mainstream media, banks, and megacorps. These people lack imagination and resourcefulness. They obey the law, rarely take risks, have few aspirations beyond buying a house and/or starting a family, consume popular media, buy new gadgets every year, and don't question the government much. Their long-term life goals might vary between traveling on long holidays or accruing a large amount of wealth, mansions, yachts, supercars, etc., but are rarely creative or altruistic. These kind of people make up the majority of the population in first world countries, and are what I consider NPCs of this world.
It's really not that deep, senpai. It's a funny meme, and people have adapted it to mean different things. You're going to get a whole bunch of inconsistent answers because people are not all using the NPC meme in a consistent fashion. That hurdle alone throws a spanner in the works. You can't just say, "Who is an NPC? Checkmate," because you're using the meme in a fundamentally different way than many people, including the original study. And even with those who do use it the way you intend, what makes you think it's worth criticizing? It's all in-group, out-group politics. Are you going to police every other example of that too just to look enlightened? Othering is the oldest and noblest of social traditions. All sentient beings do it as soon as they have a concept of self. You aren't special or smart for pointing this out.
Control F rank, no results. I'm really disappointed /x/. The whole NPC thing started on /x/ if you go far back enough. People questioned if reincarnation could be real. If reincarnation were real, then several human beings would have to share a single soul because of the increasing birth rates. Some autists saw this, then used this to explain his worldview on /R9K/, saying that he felt like some people are NPCs because of the way they talk. It's like talking to NPCs in a video. Saying something would trigger an automatic response that they always said. Like you were to say something to an NPC in, let's say, Oblivion, the NPC would always make a face and repeat what they said. This post made on R9K triggered many people so hard because he basically described them. The internet saw how it triggered them, then started making memes, using the grey Wojak with dots for eyes and lines for nose and mouth that originated on R9K. It got to the point where the triggered were so butthurt that they started reusing meme themselves. That's all you need to know.
Love how NPCs classically mistake those who call them out as thinking they're the main character, which just does to show even further how lacking in thought they really are. Because they can't imagine a world where there are others different from them, they immediately think, he must think he's better than everyone, instead of realizing that their thought process is more like an MMO than a single-player game. There are many playable characters, but there are far more non-playable characters to flesh out the world. NPCs are scripted, they live static lives and will never actually amount to anything. They can't even begin to entertain the idea of actually being of any significance. And so the idea that there are people out there capable of just that, they can only envision it as the main character. Let's discuss the NPC meme even more and gain a greater understanding of our universe. Most people have literally no inner voice or deeper thought. This is proof enough that NPCs are real, probably due to the limited soul theory. Oh, and let me clarify something. I don't think we're in a simulation. I just think the game format fits because, quite frankly, the way we modeled computers to mimic a living organism with a kind of brain, needing to be fed a source of power, having a system to tell when things are wrong but lacking a soul and therefore things like feelings. So did we create games as a mimicry of life, of our universe and existence? We make games with tons of NPCs that are there to flesh out the world, but there are key characters, just as important as the PC in a solo game, or other playable characters that actually move the game and its story along, just like how we can make our world story move along. Once you realize this, you realize that there are a number of PCs in positions of power, like politics or CEOs, who are driving the story into a shitty dystopia. NPCs will simply follow the narrative, do not actually engage with them. They are distractions or worst and tools at best. Best way to tell is that NPCs cannot go on quests.
We are in a simulation. The vibes are very artificial now. Yes, NPCs are real. 99% of the population is not real. Only maybe a handful of players, real people, exist. My town turned into what feels like a ghost town. I guess a ton of NPCs got removed or something. It feels less like it now, but the feeling is still there. Heck, I think the whole plague was simulation related. Maybe they needed to hide the glitches from people, so they had them stay home and gave out masks to hide the NPCs' faces. Maybe it was just an event to move us to a certain in-game event they have planned. I mean, we did have a tech CEO, Aaron Valenti, say, "This is a game, a thought experiment. We are in the Matrix," before she went missing and was found dead days later. This was only a month or so before the whole plague thing started.
Realizing I'm an empty nothing. I'm not sure if I'm on my last cycle or something, but I've been under supervision my whole life. My ego is completely made up and really just a bunch of poisonous thoughts. I know this because when I rid myself of my thoughts, no new ones come in that are of any use. I usually just spend my time zoned out dissociating. And I used to have time hallucinations constantly as a kid. I don't know what the fuck I am. Everything is just a parasite in my head,
and I often find myself observing an ego after every conversation. That thinks it's cool, or whatever. It's completely not me, but the words I speak are its words. I've felt like this for a very long time. I have some powers to manipulate things in this world how I see fit. But I really don't care to, because I'm reaching this weird ass point where I really just don't care about anything. Death doesn't scare me, but I do remain worried about the future that lies ahead for me after I have died. What should I even do? I wanted to embark on a hero's journey and try to improve this world. But I'm starting to think my goal was planted in me over time, and I was manipulated into thinking it was important or that anyone would care. Is there anything inherently wrong with just spending the rest of my life observing? I don't know what I desire, and everything dries up quickly. It's almost like I've lived 1 billion lives and been granted the abilities to change this world with my mind. But I see almost everything as meaningless, but not in a nihilistic way. Patterns reveal themselves to me very quickly, and everything I could enjoy collapses under a little bit of observation or analysis. My ego is freaking out about this.
Nobody else is sentient at all. Probably. You can't even actually prove that anyone else is sentient at all. I know that I'm sentient, but I 100% believe that everyone else on Earth is an NPC. For example, my mom is literally bipolar, but if you call her out on it, she freaks out. But her moods really do reflect bipolar behavior. I'm pretty sure she's a literal NPC. She's told me the same stories over and over all her life and can never come up with new ones. Absurd. I was also given a sister who is scripted to never be able to save money. She lives in a literal building, like a storage shed, with her boyfriend and several children. Again, I can't make this shit up. Honestly, I have a shit ton of reasons for why I don't think others are sentient. The main reason being that they simply are not intelligent enough. I would say I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I have general knowledge that you would expect someone to have. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm pretty sure it's all just a simulation. It's far too random to not be one.
You're dumb. All living beings on Earth that respond to stimuli are sentient. What you're referring to is sapience. Sapience is what differentiates man from animal. Here is where I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're under 25. You don't feel like you've accomplished much, but more than your family. Now I'm going to explain why you're wrong, why you're dumb, and why on earth I came to these conclusions. 1. Parents pretty much stop having new stories because they grow up. What I mean by that is, as a child, you develop stories to tell your future kids. When you have those kids, all the stories you tell are up to the point of having a kid. As the stories of you being an adult don't come into relevance in the child's life. So your mom will tell you things to relate to you, and she'll tell you often because the lessons learned are in her eyes important. Anyway, it's important that the tree of superiority be watered with blood, lest another supreme gentleman rise up in a BMW. You're not as cool as you think you are. You're not as smart. Certainly you could stand having someone in real life explain why a 22-year-old having baby's first solipsism isn't unique or edgy like you feel. Maybe it's Elliot R.'s ghost who's come back from the dead to shit up the paranormal board.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.